Are you seeing,
Yes,
you see my presentation?
yes.
Perfect. So I need to go back a slide or two. So thanks again for joining us. We are here to discuss the UNA USA Fellowship Initiative, and I think it's important for you to have a context and understanding of how the fellowship relates to the United Nations Association of the United States of America. So for the time that we have together, I'm going to try to take you through a journey, provide some examples, some samples, and hopefully inspire you to be an advocate for UNA USA, to be an advocate for the United Nations in the work, the significant work that you provide to students in the campuses that you serve on. Again, my name is Troy Wolf. I'm Senior Director, Partnerships and Special Initiatives at the United Nations Foundation. With me on the call and relatively new to us is Raven Joseph. I just want to open up the mic for a second for Raven to just say hello and just a little bit about herself. Raven?
Thank you, Troy. Hello, everyone. My name is Raven Joseph. I have the pleasure of serving as the program coordinator for the UNA USA Fellowship Initiative. I've been with the team for about 4 months now and have had the pleasure of speaking with students from various campuses across the US who are participating in UN internships. It's a pleasure to speak with you all, and I'll turn it back over to you, Troy.
Thank you, Raven. And sorry for the background noise there. You heard a siren, so that is passed. Just a little bit more about me. So again, as I said, I have been with the foundation for 13 years. I have worked in various capacities. I approached this work through the lens of 3 experiences: that of an educator, that of a social worker, because I encompass the entire person that I'm working with, and sometimes a miracle worker, because as you all know, in the education space and or the nonprofit space, there are never enough resources for us to work with. So we innovate, we ideate, and we come to solutions and conclusions regardless of the resources that we have. Earlier this year, I was fortunate to visit Berlin with an organization that we have a partnership with, and went to the Berlin Wall and saw this quote. And I thought that this mural expressed well the philosophy of my work. Many small people who in many small places do many small things that can alter the face of the world. It reminds me of a statement by our founder that I will share with you later. Our agenda for the day is to provide a little background on the United Nations Association of the United States of America, the role of civil society in supporting member states and the United Nations, to share with you by example what it means to localize the Sustainable Development Goals, to share information about the UNA USA Fellowship, and to hopefully have you assist us in finding the next cohort of UNA USA Fellows. So often I come to sessions like this to get new ideas and resources. So hopefully during our time together, what I share will stimulate new thinking on your part for what you do and how you do it. Ultimately, our goal for the day is to make you and our students, our communities, aware that the power to address the issues rests with we, the people. So let's take a survey. And I'm going to ask for some help from Lordania. If you can just monitor the chat. So the question I'm asking you, and I want you to put somewhat, very familiar, or least familiar. I am somewhat familiar with the United Nations and the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm very familiar with the United Nations and the Sustainable Development Goals, or I am least familiar with the UN and Sustainable Development Goals. So again, please type in somewhat, or very familiar, or least familiar. And Lordana, as a couple of those come in, you can just share them with me and we'll keep it moving. Just want to get a feel for people's understanding of the UN and the Sustainable Development Goals, because that is rooted in a lot of the work of UNA USA.
We have 7 somewhats, a few very,
Okay.
8 somewhats.
Okay, I'm happy with the somewhat. That's great. That's excellent. And so on this journey, we're going to talk a little bit about the SDGs, so that hopefully by the ending of this call, you have a greater understanding of what it means and what it means to apply the SDGs. So for now, a word from the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres.
No country, no community is able to solve the complex problems of our world alone. We need to come together, not only to talk, but to listen. It is absolutely essential that you all join the conversation. We need your opinions, your strategies, your ideas for us to be able to deliver better for the people of the world that we must serve.
So you heard there a cry to engage the world in solving our solutions. So an inflection point. Just this past September, the United Nations hosted the Summit of the Future, a high-level event bringing world leaders together to forge a new international consensus to redefine the path forward for a more active and more secure future. But what's needed is greater commitment and action from civil society. It is civil society who holds member states accountable. So to this moment, we invite you to learn a little bit about the United Nations Association as a partner, the Sustainable Development Goals as a framework for good, and to have your voice and your ideas centered in the conversation to make the world a better place. As we state, we will not fix current issues with the same thinking that created them. We must do things differently. I'm going to do another survey here, and I mentioned the word civil society. And just if you can type it in the chat, and I just want to get a couple of sampling. Do you think you and your community, your friends, your students are aware that they are called civil society? You can just type your answers in the chat. Do you think that the groups that you work with, yourself, your community, your family, do you think that we are aware that the United Nations refers to us as civil society? And LaDonna, if you can just give me some samples again.
So far, overwhelmingly, no.
Right. And so I bring this to your attention to make you realize that there is a disconnect between what plays out on the global stage at the United Nations from our representatives, as we call them member states, which is a different word for nations, versus what plays out on the ground. And to this pivotal moment, we're really looking at ways for the United Nations to interact differently with civil society. And the way that that will work is that we are all being called upon to have stronger relationships and ties with our elected officials to hold them accountable. So, don't want to run this, okay? A tipping point for me was serving as the 2024 Civil Society co-chair of the Outreach Subcommittee. We were tasked with telling the world about the upcoming civil society in Kenya and the need to have civil society hold member states accountable for the many promises already made. I have not moved away from this thinking, and it is in this context that I share this time with you today. During the closing remarks of the conference in Kenya, the Secretary General makes reference to civil society. He states, "Civil society is an essential bridge between people and their representatives." He calls us the glue that holds democracies together. I strongly believe that. So hopefully, for our time together, I will provide you resources for you too to better understand the United Nations Association of the United States of America and the opportunity to engage students in the UNA USA Fellowship. UNA USA is a movement of Americans dedicated to supporting the United Nations. Members are committed to achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which we will discuss in detail later on. UNA USA is the largest network of UN supporters in the world. We are part of an international body that falls under the acronym WFUNA, which stands for WFUNA. So there are UNAs all over the world. We happen to be representing the domestic or the United States portion of a United Nations Association in that framework. We have more than 20,000 members, 220 chapters across the United States. More than 75% of our membership base is under the age of 26. So we're doing something very relevant in the space where young people are finding us, they're activating their free membership, and they're getting involved. While not all chapters are of equal size and capacity, the national office, which is where Raven and I work, the national office is very interested in connecting you, your school, and your students with these local chapters, perhaps to collaborate on a future project. And you see here, we're very interested too in increasing our footprint in the middle of the country. If you look on the East Coast and the West Coast, we have a lot of white dots. If you look in the middle of the country, not so much. And some might argue that it is in the middle of America where conversations about the work of the United Nations is perhaps most relevant. Let me be clear here. We are not the United Nations itself. Often when I say that I work for the United Nations Foundation or the United Nations Association, they never hear the foundation part. They never hear the association part, and they think that we are representatives of the UN. We are not. But we are the only non-government organization who, by formal agreement with the United Nations, enables us to carry out our work. As many of you know, the United Nations was created in 1945 to prevent World War III. The UN Foundation was created 26 years ago by media mogul Ted Turner when he was upset that the United States had not paid their dues to the UN. All member states must pay dues. At the time, we were in arrears $1 billion. He did what any billionaire could have done. He attempted to write a check to the UN for $1 billion. The UN could not take it. The story says that he went down to Washington, caucused with some of his friends on Capitol Hill, and created the UN Foundation. Our headquarters is blocks away from the White House in Washington, D.C., and we have a much smaller office here in the New York City area. Likewise, the United Nations Association was created before both of these entities. We were created by former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt when she set out to go across the country and engage young people to create the world that they wanted to live in. That is still core to our DNA. As I said, the core of our membership base is under the age of 26. We continue to grow, continue to be relevant in that space, and we invite you to learn more and roll your sleeves up and assist us. In addition to a focus on the Sustainable Development Goals, we provide a variety of entry points for interested members, partners, and the community to get involved through the Global Engagement Summit in New York City. Sorry about the noise. The Leadership Summit, and UN Day events, professional development opportunities, and many chapter-led events that take place across the country. These experiences can be life-changing for some as they discover pathways to pursue passions. We invite you to join us on one or all of these events. And just to provide a little bit more context, the photos you see over here to the right, the top one, that is the General Assembly Hall. That is a photo taken from a live Global Engagement Summit, which usually takes place in February or March. We maxed out the full General Assembly Hall, which is a little under 19,000 seats. The Secretary, we have been fortunate every year to have the Secretary General himself. Hopefully one day we will say herself. It's time for the United Nations to have a female Secretary General. Hasn't happened yet, but our fingers are crossed. But the Secretary General often joins us during these events. And then throughout the day, we hear from other high-level officials at the United Nations about important work within a calendar year. Likewise, the picture lower there, you see us on Capitol Hill. The LS stands for the UNA USA Leadership Summit. This is a 3-day event that takes place in Washington, D.C. The first day, really, we do a deep dive in understanding what it means to be an advocate for the United Nations and why in this moment it's important. The second day, we look at doing a deeper dive and unpacking and developing a greater understanding of the relationship that our elected officials on the Hill or the United States has with the United Nations and why that's important and significant. And then the third day, this picture here, we call it Hill Day. We put on our UN blue t-shirts and we go meet with our locally elected officials. So I'm assuming that many folks on this call perhaps live in the New York area. So if you live in New York, you would go meet with your representatives in New York. If you live in other states, you go meet with your representatives there. True to the reason that the UN Foundation was created, back to Ted Turner's story with full funding for the United Nations, core to these meetings is an ask that our government continues to fund the United Nations so it can continue to do the work, the significant work that it does. And then we weave in other things that we care about. If we care about quality education, we care about gender equality, we care about climate change, whatever it is that we care about, we weave into those conversations. We are the only network of UN supporters in the United States who do this. It is very empowering and sometimes intimidating for folks who have never gone on the Hill and met with their elected officials, but it can be a life-changing experience for some of your students who find themselves advocating for something greater than themselves on Capitol Hill. We encourage you to think deeply about participating and attending in these events. UNA USA chapters also host panels. They host recognition of UN International Days and a variety of educational activities that inform, educate, and inspire people to take action. You see here on this slide where International Days recognition, the UN has a whole list. If you Google UN International Days, you will see a whole list based on months of days that the United Nations recognizes. One of my favorite, and it's coming up soon, is World Toilet Day, which is the 19th of November. I very much like this day because often in a room, it doesn't matter what age it is, I bring up World Toilet Day, and adults and children alike, folks start to giggle. And then when you realize that it's an opportunity to have a serious conversation about access to clean water and sanitation, it's just a eureka moment, and it's a nice way to draw people in. And again, I share that with you to say that the UN has many of those days. International Day of Happiness. Some might say, well, that's a ridiculous day. But then when you begin to look at and unpack statistics about depression in the world, it's a conversation starter on mental health and well-being. So again, they're the little quirky ways to integrate the UN into just your daily routines. What more could this mean for you and your students and community? This could be an opportunity for you to attend an event, to receive training, to put advocacy into motion. It could be an opportunity for you to connect with other stakeholders who are changing the world. It could be an opportunity for you to incorporate new ways and new thinking into your work. The possibilities are truly endless. Our members support the UN in many ways, as I've stated. One way is localizing the Sustainable Development Goals. But before I share the video on the SDGs, let's do another survey. So these, perhaps you've seen this colorful chart, are the Sustainable Development Goals. In 2015, 193 member states decided, including the United States, decided that they were going to achieve these global goals by the year 2030. My friends, we have 5 years left. And Lieutenant, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor again, monitor in the chat, just by a show of hands, how many of you think that we're going to achieve all of these goals by the year 2030? And in case it's a little blurry, the first one is no poverty. The second one is zero hunger. The third one is good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, reduced inequality, sustainable cities and consumptions, peace, justice, and strong institutions, climate action. You think of something in the world, it falls under one of those. So again, by a show, if you just put it in the chat, how many of you think we're going to achieve this by the year 2030?
So far, no.
What's that?
So far, it's no.
It's no, right? Yeah, and I kind of think it's no too. And before we do the video, what do you guys think is preventing us from achieving this? Just one or two words in the chat, just as a sampling. What is preventing us from achieving this? Because I think if you asked anyone, would you like to see a world with no poverty? I think we would all say yes, right? And a lot of these things we would like to say yes to: gender equality, the sustainable cities. We would all say yes. What do you think is preventing this from happening?
There's lack of communication and connection, not enough trust among member states, greed, a truly civil society.
For sure, for sure. All that and more. And I strongly believe that the way to address these problems is much through a network like UNA USA. I think by having the courage to have difficult conversations on, this is going now back to the UN, difficult conversations on frameworks and models that are not working. We all know they're not working. To begin to think outside the box is the moment, it's the tipping point that we're in. I would also say that for all the young people that we're working with, I believe everyone on this call has touch points with undergraduate students, maybe even with some graduate students. Either way, they're much younger than I am. And what I would say here is that young people, they recognize the imbalance in systems. And I think they're not patient, and I think that's a great thing. So they are really challenging the order. And I think as stewards of education, as stewards of people who may know a little bit more, taking these young people on a journey, we too have an imperative to make sure that we start to think outside the box, or even think more outside the box than we have been, to solve some of these issues. Because as we said earlier, what we've been doing is not working. So let's watch this quick video. I just want to preface it. So you're going to think that you're not hearing things in the beginning. It is subtext. So the subtext is really what I want you to hear. You might not hear the music. That's okay. But you will see the subtext.
The best plays a part in every single SDG.
SDGs are our common language.
So I shared the short video with you just to see the magnitude of this endeavor. You know, it should be enough to say that 193 countries, member states as we call them, signed on board to achieve this. But this really is a global movement to make sure that the most vulnerable in the world are not left behind. My work in working for the United Nations Association focuses on that in a domestic sense, but this initiative is global and wide. To put another way, the Sustainable Development Goals, or Agenda 2030, as it's called, is an ambitious to-do list for the world. It is designed to leave no one behind, to address the needs of the most vulnerable, focused on the 5 Ps: people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. The UN is calling on institutions, global, regional, and local stakeholders to play a big role in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. And just a fun little fact, it's Carnegie Mellon University that looked at the Sustainable Development Goals and mapped the Sustainable Development Goals to their learning and academic objectives. And now they have a very robust program in collaboration with the city of Pittsburgh with the implementation of the SDGs in a local context. In case you're wondering, just before I scroll through this, so the Office of OECD, they put together a global ranking of where countries rank in order of achieving the SDGs. Just real quickly, who wants to put in the chat where they think America ranks? I'll just give you from 1 to 100. Where do you think America ranks? Any responses?
50, 75, 45, last 35.
Okay, you guys are kind of right there. So let me just let me show you this here. I can scroll down just so you have an idea of which countries. So Finland, the Finnish countries are top of the game. Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, etc. Croatia, Slovenia, Spain is 14, Portugal is 16. Where is the United States? Canada's number 25. Greece is 29. Where's the United States, people? Luxembourg is 38. Still don't see the US. Albania. Ukraine is 44. Argentina, Armenia. Oops, I think I may have passed it. The US is 46. So you see us here. And while some might say 46, because I know when we did the survey, some of you guys put in the 40s and the 30s in there, you know, I really think that the United States can do a much better job in our ranking with the SDGs. So let me share some other data with you and information. So on the Hill, Representative Barbara Lee out of California some years back attempted to bring a resolution to the floor supporting the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And if you see my cursor right here, she received 8 co-sponsors. And again, when we think about what played out on the global stage in 2015, with 193 member states saying that they were going to achieve the SDGs, the United States being one of them. And all of a sudden now Representative Barbara Lee is trying to bring this resolution to the floor and she gets no support. There is room for civil society to support this from the bottom up. Again, back to the civil society conference that took place in Kenya, one of the big takeaway was that we don't need any more promises. How about all countries begin to deliver on the promises that we've already made? And if we can do that, we will certainly see the world be a much better place. Back to the rankings. So I know a lot of us, or perhaps all of us, are from New York City. So let's just see where in the United States New York City is. So we have Vermont and Massachusetts are 1 and 2. Minnesota, Maine, Oregon, New Hampshire, Hawaii, Maryland, California. New York is number 11, right? And if you wanted to do a deeper dive with you know, what these statistics are, each of the states has a country state profile where you can kind of go look. So it's 11 out of 50 is the ranking. And then you have a dashboard. And where you see the arrows, the yellow arrows are slightly slanted. It means things are going up, but not as strong as we want. The orange means things have stagnated. And where's my favorite? I really like the red arrows. So the red arrows, industry, innovation, and infrastructure is going down. Reduced inequalities are going down. And I'm not going to do it in the sense of time, but you can click on these links and begin to understand why. I'm sharing these resources with you because, in my opinion, these are conversation starters. There are a great deal of resources that are already out there. I'm bringing these statistics to you, not because of what Troy says, but because there's evidence that we can do better in these spaces. And these are tools and resources that we want our young people, our fellows, all of our students, because they're part of the global community, to understand and to leverage these to do good in the world. Just a little bit more information about how a UNA USA chapter may localize the Sustainable Development Goals. Here in Northern New Jersey, where I live, the chapter, they coined a phrase and they call something called Vision New Jersey 2030. Their mission was to introduce the Sustainable Development Goals to the state of New Jersey. You can imagine you just don't roll out of bed and do that and all of a sudden everybody knows. And so the chapter made a decision to work with a small city in New Jersey, a large city, and a medium city. And eventually they started the program in a town called Hoboken, New Jersey. They ended up having a collaboration with the Stevens Institute of Technology, where students did capstone projects as part of their graduation requirements that mapped the SDGs to the sustainable needs of Hoboken. Those reports then have been shared with folks who run programs in Hoboken, and we hope to inform some of the policy. They also created a lovely little logo you see here down at the bottom. That is the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm also wearing a pin that says Sustainable Development Goals, and they put the state of New Jersey in there. So we branded it, and we're continuing to try to raise awareness about the fact that the Sustainable Development Goals exist in New Jersey, in the United States, and in the world. We will not achieve the SDGs if people continue to not know about them. Again, Northern New Jersey, they wanted stakeholders to adopt the SDG framework, or in this case, at least become familiar with it. Customize the SDGs to fit a local context. So these are not cookie cutter situations. Poverty looks different in every community. It shows up different in every community. And so we're not looking to have blanket statements and blanket conversations. We're really looking to unpack and understand with depth and detail how the SDGs manifest in your community, who's being left behind, and how we can provide programs, support, and services, sometimes that already exist, for the stakeholders who are most vulnerable. Likewise, in the Rocky Mountain region, it was directly following COVID, where many folks who didn't have access to broadband were kind of left out of the loop. The world got very dark for them. They were misinformed. They didn't know what to do. And the chapters out there created Project Rocky Mountain Region. And I quickly want to share, I'm going to have to stop my PowerPoint. I'm going to share and go to another screen. I want to share a video that they put together just so you can see how a chapter has localized the SDGs. So give me 1 second. Share again. Okay. And scroll down.
Since it
Do you
was
see my
founded,
video?
the United Nations has brought people together to tackle important issues in the world. And in 2015, its member nations adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, a global to-do list through the year 2030.
These are tangible ways we can strive to end extreme poverty, protect the planet, and ensure prosperity for all.
Local chapters in the Rocky Mountain region are working to make sure these initiatives are met across the world and at home. We are connecting rural and indigenous communities to the world through broadband internet access.
We are working to support the thousands of refugees who have come to our states for better lives.
Together, we can meet the challenges we're facing. Join your local chapter of the United Nations Association of the United States of America.
The UN begins with you.
UN begins with you.
The UN begins with you. UN begins with you.
So this was a public service announcement, again, that the chapters in the Rocky Mountain region put together to inform, educate, and inspire community to take action and be involved. Go back to my presentation. Second, sorry. Bear with me. Are we back? Should say Project Rocky Mountain Region. Excellent. So another resource that we have on an annual basis, UNA USA, we open up something called the competition for the U.S. Youth Observer to the United Nations. We have Oscar Lopez for a future event like this, or if you're trying to convene a stakeholder who is part of the peer group that you're working with. Oscar is a college student. We pluck a college student from their academic career every year, and for a full year, they travel the world representing youth voice. And so this is Oscar Lopez. He just started his term over the summer. And so we're happy to connect you with Oscar so that you can learn more about youth voice and potentially engage your students in an inspirational conversation. Here we have the UNA USA Fellowship Initiative. So I want to share with you a little bit about what that is and how you can get involved. The goal of the UNA USA Fellowship Initiative was to onboard between 10 and 15 fellows. In 2024, the goal was to onboard 30, and we met that mandate at the end of August. We provided outreach to every historically Black college and university, every Hispanic serving institute, every tribal college and university, and schools for the deaf and blind, and continue to promote this fellowship to all qualified students. On October 15th, just this month, we announced Cohort 3. We are currently seeking 15 fellows to pursue a UNA USA fellowship. Fellows are assigned to UN agencies anywhere the United Nations has an office, including Nairobi, Vienna, Bangkok, and elsewhere. This is just a picture here of some of the cohorts from previous years. Because UN internships don't pay, we cover the cost for fellows, and they receive up to $12,000 for 4 months, covering things like living expenses and other eligible incidentals. We believe that this moment in time, opportunities come to those who have strong networks. So fellows are required to join the United Nations Association of the United States of America for free and to actively engage in advocating for a better world. And I think too, because all the previous slides, you know, when you think about what UNA USA does, we're hoping and we're seeing evidence that many of the fellows are getting involved in supporting UNA USA at the national level, at the virtual level, and eventually at the chapter level as well. To be eligible, one must be an American citizen. You can be an undergraduate student, although UN agencies may have criteria where you have to be a recent graduate. Each UN agency has its own criteria, but for us, you can be an undergraduate or senior, recent graduate within 1 year of your first degree, or you may be a first year's master's student, which means if you are entering your second year of your master's program, you are not eligible for our fellowship. You also, this is a big one, you must secure an unpaid internship with a UN agency or one of its affiliates, because part of our application process requires you to show your offer letter from the UN agency. You must be affiliated with an accredited institution from the United States of America and within the United States of America. So that basically is our criteria to be involved. And I do want to say that on a monthly basis, Raven puts together a fantastic spreadsheet that lists many vacancies so that, you know, when we're working with students and when we bring this opportunity to students, we try to eliminate some of the daunting work. The United Nations and its agencies is not centralized, which means you don't submit one application and you say you want to work for UN Women or, you know, whichever organization it is, and they filter it out. You have to do some due diligence yourself. You have to find the agency. You have to find the location. You have to find what the criteria for that specific position is, and it can be different from one agency to the next. And so on a monthly basis, we do some of that canvassing for you. We put together a spreadsheet. We push it out to you. You can push it out to your students, and hopefully it will just make that process easier. And I say that to say too, you know, I know that many on this call are from schools that are heavily resourced. This program is open to everyone. We want to make sure, though I mentioned earlier, we're trying to work with people who don't know that they have a superpower. And so when we think about our honor students, when we think about the Model UN students, when we think about the students who are already traveling abroad, yes, we want them to apply too. But we also really want students who never thought that the United Nations could be a place or an opportunity for them to endeavor to explore this option. We have here fellowship responsibilities. We spoke a little bit about that earlier. Participate in surveys, participate in UNA USA. Fellows provide blogs that we post, and the blogs really are used as marketing and informational resources that we can share with other folks, trying to encourage them to become fellows as well. The application process, as we referenced before, you secure your unpaid internship, you apply to the UNA USA Fellowship, you begin the process, we interview you, and our goal really is not to, our goal is to opt you in versus to opt you out. So we are very familiar, capable, and interested in doing handholding. Again, we want all students to recognize that the United Nations has a place for us. I spoke earlier about the Berlin Wall and the quote that I saw, and wanted to return back to this about our founder, Eleanor Roosevelt. Where, after all, the universal human rights begin, in small places close to home, so close and so small that they cannot be seen on any maps of the world. Yet they are the world to the individual person, the neighborhood he lives in, the school or college he attends, the factory, farm, or office where he works. That is attributed to our founder, Eleanor Roosevelt. I carry that spirit with me in my work here. You know, one person, I believe, can make a difference, and that's kind of our work here. So at this point, I will pause. If you want to take a picture of the QR code, it will lead you directly to the UNA USA Fellowship page, and the fellowship page also then will lead you to other resources from UNA USA, membership, chapters, etc. I've put my contact information there along with Raven's. You may feel free to reach out to us at any time. Again, we look forward to having these conversations and figuring out ways that we can support you to bring this unique opportunity to your students. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you, Troy. That was terrific, packed with a lot of great information. There were some questions in the chat. Would you like to take them now?
Sure.
Okay, so Nancy Gibson asked if there are opportunities at the UN for undergraduates at the end and entry level for seniors. So I know you were discussing UNA USA, so I don't know if we want to get clarification from Nancy if this is for UN or UNA USA.
Yeah, Nancy, can you please clarify? If you can come off mic. I don't know if Nancy's, I don't see.
Yeah, I don't see her. I don't think she's on the call at this point. So we can go to the next question.
Yeah.
It was Tabitha Young who asked about a 2-week travel opportunities for students to broaden their knowledge of international diversity, but I'm not sure if there's any more clarification on that.
Is the person still on the call?
That's a great question. No. Do you have any
No.
on that?
What was the question again? I'll see if I can answer. What was the question again?
Yeah, it had to do with a 2-week travel opportunity for students to broaden their knowledge of international diversity. And I don't think this was part of your program, but I just want to see.
It's not, but I will say that because UNA USA fellows and the internships that we bring to them, which are UN internships, that the student may self-select to go to any country where there's a UN agency. And we have the funding is the same. The funding will be up to $12,000 for 4 months for them to use at their own discretion. We will still check in with them to make sure that the internship is successful. But as it relates to globetrotting, I guess I'm going to call it, we will support a student who receives an award letter from the UN anywhere in the world. I will also say that UNA USA, we enjoy a partnership with an organization called Education First. Education First is an immersive and experiential education program. They also have a business college and other stuff, but we meet them with the Explore America program, where they send students abroad and they have experiential learning trips. We have been integrating the SDG indexes that I shared with you earlier, the country profiles, so that as young people are embarking on a trip to go to these countries, they embark on that journey with an awareness of where these countries rank in terms of executing the SDGs. Other questions?
That's helpful to know, actually. EF is based here in Cambridge.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is a question regarding master students. Can they apply if their internship will take place the summer at the end of their first year program?
Sorry, at the end of their first year program. Yes. And so the way that we get around that, we've had many students who have ended their first year. They may be registered for their second year, but they have not started their second year. So as long as when the transcripts come in, because we look at the transcripts do not show any credit towards a second year, they would be eligible.
Terrific. If there are any other questions, please pop them in the chat or feel free to come off mic and ask your question directly.
And while you're doing that too, I always like to, Raven is my co-pilot. Raven, just want to make sure that I didn't miss anything. If everything's okay, you can just give me the thumbs up. Otherwise, please come off mic. Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? We hope too that you think about joining UNA USA. Again, our footprint is far and wide. Was there another comment?
Actually, I have a question.
Yes.
For schools that might not have a chapter, are they able to tap into a local chapter at another school, or how does that work?
So it depends on capacity. So on the unausa.org website, there are details with how to start a chapter. And there are two categories usually. The categories, at least how we define them in-house, is a campus chapter versus a community chapter. What's the difference? A community chapter is not on a college campus. Also, though, a campus chapter may be at a middle or high school. And so while middle school students are not necessarily our demographic, because at the end of the day, we are an advocacy-based organization, and often we get requests and activity where we have to put our name and we interact with our representative. And so we don't necessarily work directly with those under 18. Well, we do, but we don't engage them in advocacy actions is the point that I'm making. So on the website, if you're interested in creating a chapter within your campus, those details are spelled out. If you're interested in creating a community chapter, let's say you're part of some civic organization or the Boys and Girls Club or your church or something like that, and you have been moved by this conversation and you want to create a UNA USA chapter, we do spell out those details as well. If all of that fails and you still have additional questions, hopefully you got my email, twolf@unausa.org, and you can reach out to me and I'm happy to guide you towards the right resources.
That's great. I didn't know about the community chapter option.
Yeah.
I'm curious if anyone wants to pop in the chat if they have a chapter on their campus or if they're aware of one.
And while they're doing that, I'd also like to hear about the fellowship and if what we've shared with you today and the QR code, if you feel that you are prepared to get a group of students, because what we would love to do, if you got 5 or 10 students who qualify, that would be recent rising seniors, recent graduates, first-year master's students. If you were able to put together 5 or 10 students who are interested in learning more, who qualify, Raven and I would love to have a conversation with them, a Zoom conversation, and to share the resources, to share the vacancies, just to address their questions. Because I will say, with the goal this year, right now, 15 slots for cohort 3, cycle 1, that's not a lot. And so that may go kind of fast. And so we're just trying to get the word, spread the word far and wide. We are in Q1 moving into fundraising mode. And so we hope to get additional funding so that we can continue this program. But right now we've just got funding for the first 15 of cycle 3, and then there'll be another 15 after May.
There's a question in the chat about the deadline. When is the deadline?
Raven, do you have that information?
I do. So our first initial deadline is going to be February 28th, 2025.
Terrific.
And I would say too, for us funding, we may move beyond. If we don't get 15, which I'm sure we will, between now and February, we will continue to recruit more. Funding and the number is based on the funds available to fund them. And so while we say the max is 12, what we have seen for every cohort that we've had, and this is the 3rd one, that not all fellows max out at the 12. Some max out at 6, some max out at 4. Just kind of, it depends on the length of their internship.
So can you share, is there a web page that you can use? Okay, I see, Raven, you just popped it in the chat. Thank you. So you're getting some note of thanks as some people are hopping off. And it looks like there is one person responded that their campus does have a chapter and they didn't even know.
Nice.
Curious to know what school, Rachel?
Nice.
Oh, George Mason University.
George Mason, yes, very active chapter. Yep.
Terrific. Any other schools have a chapter? Or maybe there is one and you're not aware at this point anyway.
Cornell had a chapter started in 2015, but no longer. Yeah, and the thing with chapters, you know, just like any organization, when the leadership graduates, and our goal is to graduate the students, right? It's finding a successor, and so we are trying to get better at that. You know, we're trying to develop succession plans where, you know, by the time somebody's a sophomore in the chapter, we've already identified the person's replacement. So, work to be done.
Great. And we just have a few minutes left, but I think there's time for a question or two, or if you'd like to share anything, that would be great. Again, I just want to encourage for those still on the call, the PISA list is a great way to exchange information and continue the conversation. I would encourage you to do that. Yeah, you're getting a lot of notes of thanks.
Awesome. And LaDonna, I would say too, you know, we threw out a lot of information in a short period of time. My hope is that as your stakeholders reflect on some of this and they go back to their work, that, you know, over time, things are gonna click and things will fall into place. And, you know, I guess the message here is, while we came together to really learn more about UNA USA and the fellowship, my message is this conversation means nothing if we can't apply some of the thinking, some of the tools, and some of the resources that we shared here. And we're not asking folks equally to apply them in ways. We're asking you to interpret it and to use it in ways that are relevant for you and your community. And I get really excited about that. So happy to help, happy to think of us as a resource going forward. Thanks again.
And thank you both. This has been terrific. I learned a lot, even though we have had a chapter here and I attended some programs. So thank you very much. Thank you all who are still on the call and have participated and asked your questions. We really appreciate that. And I think with that, we can end if there's any, I don't see any other comments in the chat, we can, I guess, end at this point.
Excellent.